Thank you, Chairman Biden, Ranking Member Lugar, and members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk with you today about recent increases in global food prices. Developing countries and lower-income individuals are disproportionately affected by food price increases, and the committee's focus on this issue is particularly timely. There are a few measures of food prices. We focus on two. The first is the International Monetary Fund's Global Food Index. This measure consists of virtually no processed foods, which may accurately reflect the consumption of individuals in developing countries. For the average consumer in the United States, we analyze the CPI. This index places heavier weights on processed foods, which Americans consume in large proportions. Global food inflation was 43% during the 12 months ending in March 2008. While this rate is high, it is not unprecedented. Similar rates were seen in the mid-70s, and other periods have experienced high world food price inflation. But that makes the current situation no less difficult. Although the IMF Global Food Index increased 43%, the U.S. food CPI increased only 4.5%. The reason for the smaller rate of inflation is that Americans tend to consume highly processed foods and food in restaurants. When consumers in the United States purchase food from supermarkets, convenience stores, or restaurants, a large fraction goes to cover labor associated with preparing, serving, and marketing the food that we eat. This is much less true in developing countries. The effect of food price inflation on individuals in poor countries is even more pronounced because the poor spend a larger fraction of their income on food. The typical American spends slightly less than 14% of total expenditures on food. In contrast, Africans spend 43% of their expenditures on food, and those subsisting on less than $1 a day in sub-Saharan Africa may dedicate as much as 70% of their expenditures to food. Americans also vary in the proportion of their incomes that they spend on food, but it is not too different across income groups. Food inflation is important even in the United States, and it is useful to understand its underlying causes. Grains and seeds have experienced the most rapid price increases over the last 12 months, ending in March. Wheat prices have increased by 123%, soybean prices by 66%, corn by 37%, and rice prices have increased by 36%. Increased demand in emerging markets is an important factor that contributes to food price increases. Rapid growth in emerging economies over the past several years has been accompanied by improving living standards, including better diets. Millions of people are becoming part of a growing middle class in these countries with greater purchasing power. A consequence of this development is greater consumption of grains and meat, which use grain as feed. Emerging market food consumption has increased by nearly 45% for the 2001 to 2007 period as compared with the 1991 to 2000 period. This factor cannot entirely explain the recent spike in food prices, however, since consumption in these emerging economies has been growing steadily over the past decade, and grain price increases have only risen noticeably over the past 2 years. We estimate that the increase in emerging market economies' demand can account for about 18% of the rise in food prices over the past 12 months. On the side of food supply, adverse weather has been a key factor in recent rises in food prices. Australia, China, and many Eastern European countries have experienced severe weather-related events that have lowered crop yield. Most analysts point to reduced harvests in these countries as the primary cause of large increases in wheat prices. A return to normal weather patterns should help to put some downward pressure on food prices. Unfortunately, the decline will be gradual, since inventories of wheat have been depleted and rebuilding stocks of grain will keep prices high for a while. The contribution of biofuel production to recent food price increases may be a topic of particular interest to the committee. The bottom line is that ethanol production is a significant contributor to increases in corn prices, but neither U.S. nor worldwide biofuel production can account for much of the rise in food prices. Among the existing stock of biofuels, ethanol is by far the largest type. with corn-based ethanol accounting for a substantial portion of total ethanol. We estimate that the increase in U.S. corn-based ethanol production accounts for approximately 7.5 percentage points of the 37% percentage point increase in corn prices over the past 12 months. The increase in corn-based ethanol production in the rest of the world accounts for as much as an additional 5.5 percentage points. Let me put this in context. Because corn represents only a small fraction of the IMF Global Food Index, we estimate that the increase in total corn-based ethanol production has pushed up global food prices by about 1.2 percentage points of the 43 percentage point increase in global food prices, or about 3% over the past 12 months. It appears that the renewable fuel standard has not yet become a contributing factor in increased ethanol production. At current corn and gasoline prices, ethanol production is profitable regardless of the mandate. Indeed, EIA's projection for ethanol production in 2008 suggests that we will supply 9.15 billion gallons of ethanol, including imports, which is above the 9 billion gallon mandate. The mandate may become a factor in the future. Other policies, ethanol subsidies and tariffs, may also be factors contributing to the increased production of ethanol in the United States. In conclusion, it is possible that food prices may remain elevated over the next year, but we do not expect to see the rapid rates of global food price inflation that we saw this year. Some factors contributing to recent food price inflation, such as weather, should wane, but other factors, such as growing demand in emerging markets, will continue to put upward pressure on food prices. Furthermore, agricultural markets may respond to higher farm prices and margins by increasing supply, which should alleviate high food prices over the next few years. I welcome your questions.